Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
I was 16 when the first real crack appeared in my family, and it was deeper than any argument, any disappointment. It was a Thursday evening, one of those ordinary nights where everything felt slightly off, but not enough to set off alarms. That is, until my father came home from work, late. His face was drawn, eyes dim with the kind of exhaustion that clung to you, and I knew something was different. I sat at the kitchen table, absently scrolling through my phone while my mother, ever the perfectionist, stirred a pot of something that smelled like burnt resentment. Dinner had been ready for over an hour, and the tension between them was simmering just as heavily as the sauce on the stove. Late again, Mom's voice was sharp, cutting through the hum of the evening. She didn't even turn around as she said it, her back straight, shoulders rigid. The words were a question, but there was no question in them at all. "I told you I had meetings," Dad replied, weary. He placed his briefcase by the door, hanging his coat in that habitual, deliberate way he always did. I watched the exchange unfold like I had seen it 100 times before, knowing where it was going but powerless to stop it. "You always have meetings, Richard," Mom shot back, turning to face him now, her lips pulled tight in frustration. "But your family? That's not on your schedule, is it?" Dad sighed, rubbing his temples as if trying to ward off the argument before it began. "But we all knew it was too late for that. Can we not do this tonight, Antonia? I'm tired." "Oh, you're tired?" Mom's voice rose, the words dripping with venom. "I'm tired too. Tired of being ignored. Tired of being alone in this marriage." The sound of their voices rising wasn't new. It was the soundtrack of my life lately. But tonight, something was different. There was a finality in the air, a weight that made my stomach twist. "Enough, Antonia," Dad said, his voice suddenly firm, louder than I had ever heard it. "I can't do this anymore." And just like that, the dam broke. I stood up from the table, frozen in place as I watched him walk towards the stairs. "What do you mean? You can't do this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, but he didn't answer. He didn't even look at me. "I'm leaving," Dad said, louder now as he passed me by, heading upstairs. The words hit me like a gust of cold wind, sharp and unforgiving. Mom's face twisted in shock, but she quickly recovered, crossing her arms tightly over her chest. "Good," she snapped. "Maybe you should have left a long time ago." The words were out of her mouth before she could take them back, and I could see the instant regret flash across her face. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. I bolted after him, my heart pounding, the sound of my own footsteps loud in my ears as I followed him upstairs. By the time I reached his bedroom, the suitcase was already out, flung open on the bed like a silent declaration. Clothes were tossed inside, haphazard and desperate, and I stood frozen in the doorway, watching the man I thought would always be there for me packing his life away. "Dad, stop," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You can't just leave, please." He paused for a moment, his back to me, his hand still, but he didn't turn around. "Kira, sweetheart, this isn't about you. It's between your mother and me." "No," I said, stepping into the room now, my hands shaking. "It is about me. I'm your daughter. You can't just walk away." Dad finally turned to face me, his eyes red-rimmed, filled with a sadness so deep it nearly took my breath away. "I don't want to leave you, Kira, but I can't stay here anymore. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine." I wanted to scream to make him stay, but the words got stuck in my throat. Mom's voice carried up the stairs, bitter and sharp. "Let him go, Kira. He's been halfway out the door for months now." The suitcase zipped closed with a finality that sent a chill down my spine. Dad grabbed it, walking past me with one last, soft touch to my shoulder. "I love you," he whispered, and then he was gone. I followed him downstairs, tears blurring my vision, and stood there helpless as he walked out the front door. The sound of it closing behind him echoed in the silence, leaving me standing in a house that suddenly felt like a stranger's. "Mom," I croaked, turning to face her. "Why didn't you stop him?" She looked at me, her face hard, unfeeling. "He made his choice," she said coldly, turning back to the stove as if nothing had happened, as if the last few minutes hadn't completely unraveled everything I knew about my family. And in that moment I realized it wasn't just Dad who was gone. I had lost both of them. The fracture was complete. The months after my father left felt like living in someone else's house. Every room was filled with the remnants of a life we once known, but nothing felt the same. Mom threw herself into her new marriage, like she could erase the past with Amir's wealth and charm. And me? I felt lost. The only constant was the sharp, cold silence that filled our home, broken only by the occasional phone call from my grandmother. "Come by the house, Kara," Grandma said one afternoon, her voice as steady as ever. She always seemed to know when things were falling apart, even without me saying a word. "We need to talk." I knew what that meant. Grandma never sugar-coated anything. She was the founder of our family's business empire, a woman who had built her life on hard work and sharp instincts. If anyone could see through the mess my family had become, it was her. When I arrived at her estate, the house felt just as it always had, warm, welcoming, and full of life. It was the opposite of the cold, sterile mansion I lived in with my mother and Amir. As I walked through the door, Grandma was waiting for me in her office. A large mahogany desk between us, and a folder already sitting on the edge of it, waiting for me. "Sit down, darling," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Her gray hair was pulled back into a neat bun, and she looked as composed as ever. But there was something in her eyes, a flicker of urgency. I sat, trying to push down the nerves that were beginning to gnaw at me. "Is something wrong?" She gave me a tight smile. "No, not wrong, but things are changing, Kira, and I need you to be ready for it." I blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" With a deep breath, she opened the folder in front of her, sliding a few documents my way. "This company, Kira, it's always been the cornerstone of our family. Your mother, well, she and Amir are focused on expanding a branch, but I need someone I can trust with the heart of the business." I looked down at the papers, the bold letters spelling out my name in the ownership sections. My stomach flipped. "You're giving me the company?" Her eyes met mine, and she nodded firmly. "I am. You're young, I know, but you're smart, and you've got your father's grit and my determination. I see something in you, Kira, something that your mother—" She paused, searching for the right words. "Your mother never had the same understanding of what this company means. To her, it's just a source of power, but to you, it's going to be your future, if you want it." I stared at the papers, my mind racing. "But I'm 16, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to run a company." Grandma smiled, the kind that softened her sharp edges. "You don't have to do it alone. I'll be here every step of the way. But I need someone who can carry this forward, and I'm not waiting around for your mother to ruin everything." The words landed heavily between us, and I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Mom had never taken the business seriously, always more focused on her social life and the wealth it brought, and Amir, her new husband, was no different. I knew they had their eyes on expanding their influence through the company, but they didn't care about what it stood for. "What about Mom?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Grandma's face darkened slightly, but her tone remained even. "Your mother and Amir have their own interests, and they're doing fine with the branch they control. But the core business, the one that holds everything together, that's for you. If you're ready." The thought of standing up to Mom and Amir terrified me. I wasn't sure how they would react if they found out Grandma was passing the company to me instead of them. But there was a part of me, small but growing, that felt a thrill of excitement at the idea. Independence, control. A life that was mine, not dictated by my mother's whims or Amir's ambition. "I want it," I said quietly, my voice gaining strength as I spoke. "I want to take it on." Grandma's smile widened. "Good. Then we'll start right away." She leaned forward, folding her hands on the desk, her eyes shining with a mix of pride and determination. "This isn't going to be easy, Kira. There are going to be battles, and not just with your mother. There are others who will try to take advantage of you, question you, but I believe in you." "Thank you, Grandma," I whispered, my heart pounding. The weight of what I had just agreed to began to sink in, but so did a sense of purpose. For the first time in months, I felt like I had control over something in my life. As I left her house that day, the papers clutched tightly in my hand, I knew that everything was about to change. A new order had been set, one that would put me at odds with my mother and Amir. But deep down, I knew this was what I was meant to do. This was my future, and no one was going to take it from me. And for the first time since my father had walked out of my life, I felt like I was stepping into my own. The transition from student to company owner didn't happen overnight. In fact, it was the furthest thing from smooth. Juggling schoolwork, the sudden weight of responsibility, and the constant shadow of my mother's disapproving gaze was overwhelming. But Grandma was right. Something inside me had shifted. The day she handed me the reins of the company, a door opened, and behind it was a future I hadn't dared to imagine for myself. It was only a week after our conversation that Grandma called me again. This time, her tone was different. More urgent, yet oddly excited. "Kira, I need you to come to the office. There's something I want to show you." I didn't question it. The company's main office was in the heart of the city, and every time I stepped through those polished glass doors, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. But today was different. Today, Grandma was waiting in the conference room with a man I didn't recognize. His sharp suit and professional demeanor screamed lawyer. "Kira, this is Mr. Jennings," Grandma introduced, gesturing toward the man. "He's here to finalize a gift I've been working on for you." "A gift?" I asked, confused. I had already been given the company. What more could there be? Grandma's smile was warm but secretive. "Not just any gift, something that will ensure you're protected in your new role." I sat down across from Mr. Jennings, who opened a sleek black portfolio in front of him. His eyes skimmed over the documents inside before he spoke. "This is a trust fund, Kira," he began, sliding the paperwork toward me. "Your grandmother has allocated a significant portion of the company's assets to ensure that, no matter what happens with external branches, particularly those under your mother and stepfather's control, you will retain the final say." I froze. "You mean, this is all mine, like legally?" Grandma nodded, her expression firm. "I'm not taking any chances, Kira. Your mother and Amir are already circling like vultures, trying to extend their influence. I don't trust them, and neither should you. This trust gives you full control over key decisions. They can't override you. Not now, not ever." I stared at the papers, a whirlwind of emotions stirring inside me. A part of me knew this was necessary. Mom and Amir had made no secret of their ambitions, and I'd heard them whispering about their plans to consolidate the company under their leadership. But I hadn't expected this level of protection from Grandma. "What do I have to do?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just sign," Mr. Jennings said, handing me a pen. "It's all in your name. You're the sole beneficiary." For a moment, I hesitated. My mind raced with images of my mother's reaction. I could already hear her fury, the accusations that I was betraying her, that I had chosen sides. But deep down, I knew this was about more than just family drama. This was about securing my future, and the future of the company. With a deep breath, I picked up the pen and signed my name on the dotted line. Mr. Jennings smiled approvingly, gathering the papers back into his portfolio. "Congratulations, Kara, you've made a very smart decision." As soon as he left the room, the weight of what I had just done settled in. I turned to Grandma, a mixture of gratitude and fear swirling in my chest. "Do you really think it'll come to this? That they'll try to take everything?" Grandma sighed, her eyes softening. "Your mother, I love her, but she's always been more concerned with appearances than substance. Amar, well, he's another story. He sees the company as a tool, a means to an end. But this is your legacy, Kira, and I won't let them strip it from you." Her words were like a balm, easing the anxiety I hadn't even realized had been growing inside me. I trusted Grandma more than anyone, and if she said this was necessary, then it was. "I'll be ready," I said quietly, but with newfound resolve. "I won't let them take what's mine." Grandma smiled, pride shining in her eyes. "Good. Because this isn't just a gift, Kira. It's your shield. You'll need it more than you think." As we left the office that day, the gravity of my new responsibilities hit me harder than ever before. The trust fund wasn't just financial security. It was a line in the sand, a declaration that I was ready to fight for what was mine. Later that evening, as I sat alone in my room, I couldn't help but think about my mother. How long before she found out? And when she did, how would she react? The door creaked open, and Amir's footsteps echoed down the hallway. He was laughing, likely at something trivial Mom had said to amuse him. The sound made my stomach turn. I could feel the storm brewing, the conflict looming closer with each passing day. But for now, I had my shield. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was prepared for whatever was coming next. I hadn't seen my father in nearly 3 years. After the divorce, he became a ghost, barely a memory in the home we once shared. At first, I was angry at him for leaving, for breaking up our family. But now, with everything that had happened, I wasn't so sure where the fault lay. I had questions that had been gnawing at me for months, and it was time to get answers. It was Grandma who encouraged me to reach out. She saw through the veneer of my stubbornness, the facade that I didn't care about the man who had once been the center of my world. With her help, I tracked him down to a small apartment on the other side of town. He had moved there after the split, keeping his distance, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of fear of what I might think of him. I stood in front of the door, heart pounding, rehearsing my words, but nothing seemed to feel right. What do you say to the man who disappeared when you needed him most? Finally, I knocked. The door creaked open, revealing a man who looked like a shadow of the father I remembered. His once dark hair was streaked with gray, his face thinner, and his eyes, those eyes that used to shine with warmth, now looked tired and worn. Kira. His voice cracked as he said my name. It was the first time I'd heard it from him in what felt like a lifetime. "Hi, Dad," I said quietly, trying to muster a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. He stepped aside to let me in, the tension in the air thick and unspoken. His apartment was small, sparsely furnished, a stark contrast to the life we used to have. There were no family photos on the walls, no reminders of the past. It was as though he had erased the life he once lived. We sat on opposite ends of a worn-out sofa, the silence between us deafening. "I wasn't sure you'd ever want to see me again," he finally said, his voice low, almost hesitant. "I don't blame you. I've been thinking a lot about everything," I started, twisting my hands in my lap. "I don't even know where to begin. Why did you leave, Dad? Was it because of the affair?" His eyes dropped to the floor, shame washing over his features. "It's not that simple, Kira. I made mistakes, yes, but there's more to the story than you know." I waited, the weight of his words heavy in the room. "I wasn't the only one who was unfaithful," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your mother, she had her own secrets. For years." I felt a jolt of shock ripple through me. "What? You mean, she cheated too?" He nodded, running a hand through his graying hair. "It wasn't just once, either. Your mother had been seeing him more long before the divorce. She was the one who wanted out, Kira. I stayed because of you, but eventually I couldn't pretend anymore. I wasn't perfect, but she was already gone." My mind reeled, struggling to process what he was telling me. For so long I had blamed him, cast him as the villain in this fractured story, but now the lines between right and wrong were blurring. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why did you let me think you were the one who ruined everything?" "Because I didn't want to hurt you more than I already had," he said, his eyes full of regret. "I figured it would be easier for you to hate me than to see both your parents fall apart." I swallowed hard, my throat tight with emotion. It felt like my entire world had shifted again, just when I thought I was beginning to understand it. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. "I've spent so much time angry at you, blaming you for everything. And now?" He leaned forward, reaching for my hand, but stopped short, as if afraid I would pull away. "Kira, I'm sorry. I know I can't change the past, but I want to be part of your life again if you'll let me." I stared at him, the father I had lost and found all over again. There was no easy answer, no clear path forward. But part of me, maybe the part that still remembered the warmth of his embrace when I was a little girl, wanted to give him a chance. "I don't know if I'm ready to forgive you," I said slowly. "But I think I want to try." His eyes glistened, and for the first time since I arrived, he smiled. A small, tentative smile that held a glimmer of hope. "That's all I can ask for," he said softly. As I left his apartment that day, I felt lighter, as if a burden I didn't even know I was carrying had been lifted. The drive to the investigator's office felt like an eternity. My mind raced with the possibilities, each one more unsettling than the last. I had spent years piecing together fragments of my mother's lies, but today I was going to hear the full truth. The truth about the affair, about Amir, and about everything else she had hidden from me. Grandma sat next to me, her hand resting on mine, steady and reassuring. Her presence was the only thing keeping me grounded. As we pulled into the parking lot, I took a deep breath, bracing myself for the revelations that lay ahead. Mr. Bennett, the investigator, greeted us with his usual no-nonsense demeanor. He slid a thick file across the table, his eyes serious. Kira, you'll want to take a deep breath before you look through this. I opened the file and my heart sank. Photos of my mother and Amr, dozens of them, spanning the last decade. They were laughing, holding hands in hotels and restaurants, acting like a couple who had been together forever. My mind reeled at the sight. How long? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Over 10 years, Mr. Bennett replied grimly. But that's not the worst part. My eyes snapped up to his. What do you mean? Mr. Bennett leaned forward, lowering his voice. Amir wasn't just having an affair with your mother, Kira. He's been siphoning money from the company's accounts for years, without her knowledge. He set up offshore accounts, laundering funds through fake business deals. He was planning to take everything. What? Grandma gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Amir? I felt the air rush out of my lungs. You mean, it wasn't Mom? No, Mr. Bennett confirmed. Your mother may have been complicit in the affair, but she had no idea that Amir was stealing from the company. He's been using her to get access to the family business. When your mother transferred control of certain funds, Amir routed them to his own accounts. She trusted him completely, and he took advantage of that. The shock was overwhelming. Amir, the man my mother had ruined her marriage for, had been using her all along. He didn't love her, he never had. He was only in it for the money. He's been doing this to multiple companies, Mr. Bennett continued. The investigators' findings hit me like a storm. My hands trembled as I held the report, staring at the damning evidence that detailed years of deceit. But what shook me the most wasn't just my mother's long-standing affair with Amir. It was the revelation that Amir had been stealing from the company all along, transferring funds to offshore accounts, slowly siphoning away everything my grandmother had built. That night, I sat with my grandmother and father in the living room, a tense silence between us. My father, whose presence had been a lifeline for me these past few months, leaned forward, speaking softly. I had a bad feeling about Amar from the start, he said, his voice steady. That's why I reached out to a few of my old contacts when the investigation began. I wanted to help uncover the truth, Kira. I looked at him, a mix of gratitude and relief washing over me. You've done so much already. Thank you for standing by me, Dad. He gave me a sad smile. It's the least I could do. I wasn't there when I should have been, but I'm here now. And I'm not letting this go. It was comforting knowing that despite everything we'd been through, he was here, taking an active role in helping protect the company, and in a way, our family. The police were swift once the evidence was handed over. Amir, who had been on their radar for other financial crimes, was arrested in connection with a separate fraud case. The icing on the cake, his offshore accounts, filled with stolen funds from our company, were traced. He hadn't just betrayed us. He had been orchestrating a large-scale embezzlement scheme all along. I watched the news unfold with a mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, but also an overwhelming sense of justice. Amr had fooled my mother, using her love and trust to further his greed, but now he would face the consequences. The night Amr was arrested, my father stayed late, helping me and Grandma pore over financial documents. We worked together, reviewing the company's ledgers and cleaning up the mess Amr left behind. Looks like we've got a lot to fix, I muttered, rubbing my temples as the strain of the day set in. We'll get through it, Dad replied, his tone reassuring. We've got the team, the company, and each other. We're stronger than this. His words gave me the strength I didn't know I needed. The company's assets were now safe and police had already begun the process of recovering the stolen funds. Kira, Grandma said, her voice steady but kind, it's time for you to take the reins. The company is yours, and I know you'll do right by it. You've proven that. I smiled, feeling a sense of purpose I hadn't felt before. I'll do my best, Grandma, for you and for all of us. A week after Amir's arrest, my mother called. I didn't expect her to. She'd been quiet since the revelations came to light, likely too ashamed to face me. When I answered, her voice was barely above a whisper. Kira, I didn't know, she said, her tone heavy with regret. I didn't know what Amir was doing. Mom, I interrupted, feeling a strange sense of calm. I understand you didn't know, but that doesn't change the fact that you chose him over us, over the company. You let him take control while you were distracted, and we all paid the price. There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing, hear the weight of her guilt. "I'm sorry," she finally said, her voice breaking. "I've lost everything." I closed my eyes, wishing for her sake. Things had been different. "You can make things right, but it's going to take time, Mom. You need to figure out what's really important." As I hung up the phone, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. There was only a deep, quiet sadness for what my family had lost. But at the same time, I felt lighter. We had survived. We were moving forward. That evening, Dad and I sat together on the porch, the cool breeze whispering through the trees. "You've done well, Kira," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I truly believed that everything was going to be okay.